Hey there, welcome back to Jay in Transit, a podcast about connection and a discovery tour about what love means for me. Um, my name is Juana Silverio. I am a 39-year-old from New York, and I have been asking myself the question about how do I connect? How have I missed connection? And what does a true connection look like? So, in the first episode, if you haven't had a chance to listen, we talked a little bit about what open meant and how I'd been defining open. And so I thought in this episode that you're about to hear, I talked to my real life friend who uh, is a self-professed, or was a self-professed, relationship hater, and is now in the happily ever now phase. She has an interesting journey, and take a listen. So, how are you?
I'm good. So, just full disclosure, if you hear a random bark, it's my dog chiming in to participate and give his two
Of
cents. So,
course, of
we have
course.
to do that.
And so, ironically, I am in transit right now as well.
I love it.
Finished a staff retreat and on my way to see a friend for the weekend in Syracuse. So,
Okay.
um, quite fitting for now. So, why don't we introduce you to the audience of Jay in Transit? Go on
You want
ahead, tell
me
us
to do
about yourself. Huh?
that? I'm like, do you want to do that? Do you want me to do that? Okay.
I want you to do it.
So,
And make sure you're by the mic so that we can get beautiful audio.
okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Heavenly, and I've known Jay since I was 7 freshman in college. So we have been good girlfriends ever since then. And I think the best way to describe why I'm on the podcast today is because I'm a recovering relationship hater, I guess you could say, for lack of better words. Um, I definitely
Say that again. Recovering relationship.
hater, absolutely.
Oh,
I'm a relationship hater. I was the person who did not want to be in a relationship, didn't want to date, didn't want to even see anybody, entertain them, any of that. And then, fast forward a few years and now I'm engaged. So it's pretty crazy. So.
that is pretty crazy, but also pretty amazing because you're amazing and so is he. Um, so I wanted to start with exactly you telling us about the relationship hating phase.
Okay.
What was that like for you? Like, what were the things you were thinking? What would you do to, block the blessings, as they say?
Um, I think, I spent a lot of my 20s, probably the bulk of them, just in quasi relationships. So I think that's probably where it started. It was a lot of the where everything but the name. And so, friends with benefits isn't even a fair enough statement. It was just
Oh yeah.
where everything but the name. And so I get all the drama, I get all the heartache, I get some of the fun, but I don't get the title. So I'm always left confused. So that was probably the bulk of my 20s. There were a couple of significant relationships in there as well that were pretty life-changing, which was helpful to kind of keep me anchored. But by the time I got to 30, I'd really just gotten to a place where I was really interested in being with me, in dating myself. I think right around 30, I started dating a guy who checked off a lot of boxes for me. And
Right.
it started super intense and then crashed and burned within 3 months. So it was this huge, epic arc. And when it ended, I decided, I was like, I don't want to be alone. It was very clear. I was like, I don't want to be alone, but so I need to really sit down and figure out what is it what lesson am I trying to heal? Am I trying to deal with within myself that keeps bringing me back to this kind of cycle, this personality type? And when we talk
Yeah.
about that, it was like a deep arc and it crashed and burned within 3 months. I mean, we were talking about marriage. It was super serious. Um, and looking at where do we put our lives together, and then it like exploded. So
Right.
it was pretty intense. And during that process, I, I guess for lack of better words, I really fell in love with myself. And as I was healing all these parts of myself, found um, it started out being uncomfortable being alone, and then it got really comfortable and really easy. And I think the world is set up for all women, but particularly career oriented women, to
Right.
be single and to do that well. There's
Yeah.
all this advertising that promotes girlfriend trips and brunch, and
Correct.
like, so everything is like real, cushiony and secure. And I realized going into my 30s that my cup was full. I had that between my job and my girlfriends. My relationship needs were being fulfilled. And so the idea
Right.
of dealing with the drama that I had experienced in my 20s and going back into that, and having to just share, I was like, ew, I don't want to do that. So I don't want to even come near it. No, get me away from it. I don't want to go near that.
That's so funny that you brought up the relationship with your girlfriends, because I too in my 20s had that very ambiguous. Actually, I don't even think I had a relationship in my 20s, at least not in college. Um and it wasn't until I left college that I too had a crash and burn, because the guy was like 9 years older than I was, and I had just graduated college, and we were on totally different planes.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then I did too end up in a relationship that I thought, I was naming the babies at that point.
Yeah.
It was like the plan. Yes, it's written. Here we are. We sounded amazing on paper. But my arc was I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to solve issues, right? And neither did he. And so it became a tit for tat where it really could have been a healthy, growing relationship, but we didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So it was at 30 that I too broke up. I don't know, we're living parallel lives here. And I did have to grapple with a lot of myself, but still, I wanted to just go a little bit into the relationship with girlfriends that got us so comfortable in not pursuing a relationship with, with a man. Like, how did that play out for you? I'll interject because I have some distinct ways on how that played out for me.
Yeah. So I think probably, I feel like our girlfriend group, and it has like a lot of just like off splinters that go with, or I don't want to say splinters, but like branches. They're all just the
Right.
little sub branches, and then we all come back together and weave in and out. But our girlfriend
Yep.
group did a really great job of looking out for each other in college. There was no man
True.
left behind at a party or in a
Right.
situation. We followed up, we looked out for each other, we made sure that we were protected. Nobody was walking around with their ass hanging out, figuratively or literally. So it started there, where you just had your girlfriends that you would go places with, to you would go to the club with them, or you would go for us, it was going to Mary Graydon, going to the hall to like get lunch. If you just had somebody that, you would like do something with them.
Late night TDR.
Exactly, exactly. Late night little karaoke, a little breakfast waffle, and a little gossip, and then we're eyeing people that we're interested in. So it started out there, like really small, and then when you get out of college, it becomes a, oh my god, I have to go to this thing, and I don't have I can't invite that person that I'm in that ambiguous situation with, or I'm not in a situation with anybody right now, or there's a
Right.
fuck buddy. So let me call my girlfriend. Let me see what
Right.
she's doing.
That's what I was gonna say. They weren't even called situationships back then. They were fuck
They
buddies,
were fuck
or
buddies. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Those were quite common
Yeah,
for
they
sure.
were common, and so you would call your girlfriend because you can't bring your fuck buddy to your job event. So you bring your girlfriend. So it's like very
You
simple.
could not.
And then what started happening, I really also, like, what's coming to my mind is I have to blame Grey's Anatomy in like a very good way, right? Because I'll never forget
Interesting.
the episode where Meredith looks at her best friend Christina Yang, and she's like, "That's my person." She's like, "You're my person." I have Derek
Mm,
and I love him and I will marry him, but you are my person. Or you go back to Sex in the City, and Carrie's like, maybe our girlfriends are our soulmates, and men are just these fun things that come in and come out. So here you have
in
two
between.
like,
Yeah.
huge, right? Like you have these huge female archetypes for us at this time of like where we're coming of age into womanhood and dating, who are telling us, you know, these you're going to always have relationship bullshit, but your girlfriends are who will really hold you down and anchor you. So I think it starts with
Right.
like that, like you had that subliminal media message that was coming in and that was just reinforcing this idea that like these are the people that will hold you down. And so then you look up and you're now like 27, 28, 30, 32, and you're trying to advance your career and focus on that and climbing all of those ladders and jumping through all of those hoops. And that's enough drama. And so you wake up
Yeah.
and you're like, I can't add any more drama. My plate is full.
Yeah, but was it drama or was it like, were we just behind? I don't know. Maybe it was an excuse sometimes, right? Because my mom, for instance, growing up, like her thing was like, men are not, they should not be your priority. It's
Yeah.
always school.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a big one.
And so, yeah. And so yeah, I would go to school, I would have all these interactions. But I would always default to having women friends and and just climb, as you said.
No,
So
that's
I
very.
think I overlooked a lot of potential at this point.
Oh,
I don't even know where that potential is.
yeah, wasn't even checking for it. Like this idea that you went to college to get a husband or a wife, depending on your sexual preference. That never crossed my radar. It was like you go to college, you can get a degree, so you can.
You can, right? You're gonna work for yourself. You're gonna be able to do anything on your own.
And
Um,
and full disclosure, that was always my goal.
so we finished segment one, understanding that we had interesting, ambiguous connections, but we also had a lot of societal and even some traditional things that got in the way. So, in the next segment, we talk a little bit about how we married different things at that time, and that being job and friends, and how we came out of that stage.
I guess probably the biggest thing is that I I didn't really worry in the back of my mind about whether or not I would be in a long-term relationship. It was one of those things that I knew was ultimately going to be my decision. So it's kind of like one
Right.
of those, I guess maybe like The Secret, or this whole like manifesting and like energy attraction thing, where that part of my life has always, I have been less neurotic about, for lack of better words. My career
Yes.
has always been the thing that has been the thing that really took up a lot of my concentration and energy and stress and concern. And I think that's something that a lot of women from our age group, we were very much groomed to be independent and to think about that piece and to find our self-worth in our career. And so
Yes.
I know the moment that is probably the funniest and one of the biggest moments about me being anti-relationship is when you and I were on the beach in
Yes.
Delaware, and I think that was in 2016. We were on the beach, sitting on the beach, and another one of our girlfriends was mentioning how she was going to be pulling away from us so that she
Yes.
focus on just being available so that she could attract her future husband, and she couldn't be bothered with us because we were single, and she just kind of sat
We
there.
not only were we single, we had just finished saying how we were fine with the singleness.
Yes, and she made it seem like almost like we had the plague and we were
We were
had bad
disease
juju
ridden.
on us. Yes, and I looked at her and I said, "That's crazy. I'm not okay with that statement, and I'm also not ready to be in a relationship. I don't want a relationship. I don't want to be close to a relationship. I don't want anything like a relationship." And I really poo-pooed all of her sentiments and was completely at the opposite end of the spectrum. And
Yes.
I think a big part of that had, I don't know if it had to do with fear so much as it had to do with the fact that, unbeknownst to me, I was married to my job.
Ah, yeah. Got it.
And
Yeah.
it took all my time, all my energy, all my passion, all my fulfillment, all my rewards. Everything was locked in my job. And then I had my girlfriends who held me down. And so when I needed to go
Right.
out or do or see or experience something that you would do with a partner, I did with my girlfriends. But my job
Yeah.
was who was really getting all of my emotional love and attention. And
Yep.
a year later, I had a devastating, my job broke my heart. I mean, there's no other way to put it. My job broke my heart.
Right.
And
So we went into two different phases here because first we were married to the girlfriend. So we did they were our plus ones at everything. We found favorite restaurants together. I created like several workout groups with them. I actually picked up more women
mm-hmm. Yeah.
than I did men
Oh,
because I
absolutely.
was putting out the yes girl, I'm your friend boo
Yes.
vibes over and over again, and for some reason I couldn't translate that vibe across to men.
No, because it was too much of a variable when it came to men, and too much of an unsure dance,
Yeah.
or just the whole commitment piece to dating in your 30s is it it's just much more cumbersome than it is looking for friendships,
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
you get to put all of your expectations out immediately. When you're looking for a friend, it's very clear. You are my workout friend, or you are my brunch friend, or you are my
Yeah.
clubbing friend, or you are my friend. I'm looking for a friend forever. Or you are
Girl, I
my
always have clubbing friends.
yes,
Always.
yes, and it's very clear, and it doesn't feel like, and it's never one of those things where it feels hard when you uh,
When it
go
when
to,
it ends.
yes, when it ends, or when you go to transition them to either
Right.
more or less. It's so much
Right.
easier than with when dating, when you're like, so I know that we started off as butt buddies, but I think that I want to take you to this daytime thing. It's
Right.
like
Right. Right. Right.
it's
I
such a
want to
much more deeper.
introduce you to my friends.
Yes, can I clean you up and take you to this work event, because God help me, I need to not look like a spinster or a weirdo. So it's like that. It's such a much more detailed and cumbersome conversation than it is to just call your girlfriend and be like, "What you doing? Come, I need you to come do this thing with me."
Right.
That the
Right.
vulnerability is it's so much easier. And so
It is.
when in 2017, when my job broke my
Right.
heart,
Which is
I
the second thing we marry ourselves to, the job.
exactly. I realized that that my priorities were out of whack. That I was
Mm.
doing all of this and had nothing, would have nothing of my own to really show for it, and that my
Mm-hmm.
job could not love me back. That success
No.
on assignments and projects and with kids, because I'm working education, could
Yes.
not was not reciprocal love, and so that I really was married. I was married to a thing, not a living, breathing human, and so I was never going to get the full reciprocity and fulfillment out of it that I
Yeah.
was deluding myself into thinking that I was.
Yep.
So
So how did I was gonna ask how you pulled those pieces together,
Yeah.
because it was in the midst of that, right, that we found friendship that turned into love, or am I getting the timeline wrong?
No, that came almost a year later. The friendship was
Okay.
already there. But so what happened is the first thing that I did was I had to really sit down and
Yeah.
ask myself what it was that I wanted. Right. So I had to create like a vision with myself, and I had to get really clear with myself. Okay, what are you looking for? What kind of, so that I was putting out the right kind of signal. And it was, am I looking for am I looking for just a boyfriend? Am I looking for a fuck buddy again? Am I doing this because I just feel lonely and I want to just close that hole? Like, what am I doing that for? And
Right.
I realized I really was ready for that long-term relationship, that significant relationship, that I was
And
looking for that partner.
I wanted to make a particular distinction. When you were identifying what it is that you were looking for, were you leading with what you wanted or what you knew you didn't want?
That is really beautiful. So I sat down, that's a big question, right? But those are two
It
very
is.
different things. So I
Yes.
led with what I really wanted and what I wanted to see. And so
Yes.
it came in both. So I created a vision board, and I created the vision board because I wanted it to be, I wanted to make sure that I was making very clear intentions,
Right.
and that I wasn't doing it for unhealthy reasons. And so I started with these images with couples that I felt embodied these healthy relationships for me, and what it looked like. And it was really ironic because the bulk of them, the women, were older than the men. They were about 3 years older than the men, and I am 3 years older than my fiance. So
Wow.
I thought that was like the first thing that I thought was really funny. And then and so I put down all of the qualities that I wanted that person to have. And I meant character qualities. It was not, I want him to be over 6 feet, and
Right.
I want him to be, make this X amount of money, and so I took that off, and I said, I want to.
No six pack. I like six pack. Sorry.
No. It's like, the things that were really important to me, like what did I need? And so the other piece was when you talk about, was I looking for the things that I didn't want or the things that I did want? One of the hardest things that I have really learned about being in a long-term committed relationship is that person has to have the same deal breakers as you.
Oh, well,
that's yeah. And that person has to, one, because I find that it's easier, right? There's less wiggle room for negotiation on those pieces and for manipulation on those pieces. And the number one thing for me was monogamy. And I used to joke all the time. I was like, I never want to have to wonder where your dick is. I need to know where it is. I want to be able to know where it is.
I say that all the time. I was like, I never had to think about it. Why would I start now?
Exactly. Like that literally preoccupies so much time and energy in so many people's relationships. And I was like, I don't have the time for that. I'm trying to build something with you. I want you to be just as serious about monogamy and what that means to be faithful here. So that was like the number one thing. So it was very much making sure like those deal breakers started the list. And then I spent a lot of time. Yeah. And then I spent time just really preparing myself mentally to receive that.
Got it.
And so that meant to be open to it and to not shut down. And it's funny because on your episode with Rachel, and you were talking about how you go out and you're not even checking for it. You know, I notoriously have never been on a dating app, never done it, never signed up
Girl,
for it.
I've
I
been
know
having
that.
the hardest time getting back on them.
Never did it. Didn't do it. And I realized that I didn't have to. So I think there's also this belief. I think that we keep telling women. One, we keep telling women that a lot of this, that there's like this science to how they have to do it. And I think the biggest truth to that is you just have to be true to yourself
Yeah.
and remain honest with what works for you, because that's how you're going to find someone that really gets you, and it's going to be so much easier to build that relationship. Because
That was an interesting phase. As we go into phase 3, we find out how Heavenly, after having made or identified her clear intentions, wants, and needs, how she transitions slowly into Happily Ever Now.
for clarity purposes, my fiance and I used to work together, and we were friends, and were friends for a long time. We're colleagues, had collaborated on a lot of projects together, and in fact, we used to run a study abroad program together. And
Right.
he is now divorced. But I always say, if you want to know something about, if you want to truly know a person and know if you get along with a person, then you should travel with them. So, we
Traveling
traveled.
is a great indicator.
It's a
It
huge indicator.
makes or breaks relationships.
Absolutely. And then you throw in a couple of dozen kids that you have to
Oh,
manage as well, and you have to
that
be
ain't your kids. That ain't
yes,
yours.
that aren't yours, that you have to be under stress with, and then that changes. That just adds to the whole dynamic. So we did. So we worked together and built this friendship, and I found that this was a person who was fighting for me and protecting me when there was no reason for them to do it. So it was a person who, just out of the goodness of their heart, that's who he is. That was his character, where he was protecting me professionally and looking out for me and supporting me when I didn't even know that I needed him to do that or be those things. And so we built this very solid
Wow.
friendship. And after he got divorced, we started spending more time together, because I honestly, at the beginning, was just concerned. I'm watching this person, the marriage that they thought was going to be forever, and what they thought their relationship was turned out to be a lie for them, and his heart was broken. And I was just really worried about him, and I didn't want him to feel
Right.
alone or be alone. And so I would go out with people and go do stuff, and I would call him and be like, will you come out, come hang, we're doing this, we're going to that, let's go see this
Right.
movie. So it was very much just how I would have
So
treated a person.
you mimicked the you mimicked the behavior he was doing for you
Yes,
subconsciously,
yes,
essentially.
yeah. That's a really great way to look at it. Yeah, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
was treating him, I know this is probably making laugh, but was like doing a lot of the same stuff that I would do with my girlfriends. Like, oh, come on, let's go do this thing, and let's go do
Yes.
that, and wasn't caring what I looked like or what we were doing. Like, come on, let's go do this thing, And
Right.
so, and then I looked up, and our students were just like, are y'all together? And we were like, no, we're just friends. Well, how would you even think that? And our colleagues were like, are y'all together? And we were, you can tell us, just tell the kids. I'm like,
Right.
no, why would you think that's just my friend? And I'm just looking out for him. And,
Right.
so
Right.
the other piece, when you start looking at like this journey and the package that it comes in, it doesn't always come the way you think it was going to come. I was afraid that it was
Yeah.
too soon for us to, like, when I finally realized, okay, maybe I probably have feelings for this person and this person might have feelings for me, I was concerned. I was like, oh, it's too soon after his divorce. We worked
Yeah.
together. What does this look like? What about that? And then I had to finally say, who cares? Because when you
Yeah.
start dreaming with fear, that's not a dream, that's a nightmare.
Mhm.
And
That's a nightmare for sure. That's very
And
powerful.
so, and I asked him, before when you asked me to do this, I asked him, I said, well, what made you decide to date me? Because you had just gone through a traumatic divorce, however many months before, and I was your friend. What made you decide to do it? And he said, because you made it easy. And I always said that.
I'm
Oh,
sorry, I
I,
missed
I
that
asked him,
part.
I said, what made you decide to date me? And he said, because you made it easy.
Yes.
And I said, well, what does that mean? He was like, do you remember how we started dating? So we started dating because I asked,
You have to say it one
oh,
more time because I don't think you
oh,
caught it.
I asked him what made him decide to date me. And he told me because
Yes.
I made it easy. And I said, well, what does that
Oh,
mean, easy? He
nice.
said, well, do you remember how we actually started dating? So we actually started dating because I finally looked at him. And I mean, like, I actually, like, physically looked him in the face.
I
And
love
I
the
said,
story.
you should date me. He was like, wait, what? And I said, yeah, you should date me. And he said, well, I don't know. I don't want to mess it up. I might do. And I said, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I was like, I don't think that you're going to do it. He was do anything to hurt me. He was like, no, I wouldn't do that. You're right. I'm not a douche. I wouldn't do those things. And and, and I said, okay. And so I was like, and so he said, well, what if it doesn't work out? I was like, if it doesn't work out, then it's fine. I was like, we're friends already. And he
Yeah.
said, okay, well, what would it look like? And I said, it would look like this, except you would get to touch on me. Don't you want to touch on me?
Oh.
And that's
Yes.
what he said. And so then, and so then and literally we just started dating after that. Um, and so like I kind of like tucked and rolled into this relationship, but I said to him really early on though, I made my intentions very clear, and I said I'm not ready to get married today or even in the next year or two, but I do want to be
Right.
married. And I said, do you see yourself getting married again? I said, because if you don't, there's no
Right.
point, to continue. And he was like, no, I absolutely do. And so there were a couple of things where I did not feel afraid or scared to just ask for what I wanted up front. And so there was no manipulation at the beginning, and no confusion and no secrecy, which I think is another really huge thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so I think you dropped some beautiful gems here. Number one, leading with what you want versus what you don't want. Because that's the struggle I've been having. I'm like, I know I don't want, and I
mm-hmm,
know, and so it's made it difficult to kind of identify what my wants look
mm-hmm,
like. The other thing is you. It seems as if you just started looking around
mm-hmm.
you versus looking in places that you never would be
Yeah,
anyway.
and I just remained open too. I don't even know. I don't even
Like
know.
what how did that open look like?
So right before
Like
him, well, I mean not right before him, but months before him, I was set up on with a guy who uh,
okay.
was not meant for me. But I was like, fine. I
Mhm.
was like that. I was like, I'm okay. I was like, I'll be open to that. So it wasn't even so much a process of fishing. It was just being open
Yeah.
to the possibilities. And I love what you said about being open to what was around me, because that just means being present, so that when opportunities present
Yeah.
themselves, you don't start putting up roadblocks as to why not. So I just remained curious.
So being present sounds a lot less intimidating than being open because then we start making up all sorts of stories about what that means. Like, does that mean that I smile more, that I
Right, right.
does it mean, yeah, like, am I going out more? That's
Yeah.
open. But being present actually paints such a different picture. Actually, I almost felt like a calm feeling come over me. It was like, oh, she means present. I can do
And it was,
present.
and it was for me too. It was very calm because I have a real, like, I really just don't like strangers. It's not lost on me that the
Right,
majority of my relationships came out of people that were my friends first, because you could trust them and could,
right, right.
ease into vulnerability with them. So the idea of being present meant that I didn't have to look at you as forever. I just had to show up in that moment
Mm.
and be fully aware and open to wherever that moment was taking us, and mindful of where I wanted to go too.
So, as you can imagine, Heavenly being a girl's girl and having other single girlfriends, how there could be some mixed feelings. And so I asked Heavenly about that and how she was able to move past that and focus on her happily ever now.
What's the support looking like amongst your friends?
Can you hear me?
Did so I'm gonna have to ask you to say
Okay.
that again.
Okay. Well, all I did was laugh at what you said, because the irony is that I would say, by and large, the support is incredible. I would say, damn near everybody in my life got that he was important and that this was significant. And based on my personality type, one, I'm incredibly secretive. I can have a whole full-on relationship with a person, and my friends won't even know.
Right.
So so the fact that I was like telling people, they were like, "Oh, this is serious." The fact that I moved to a different state, and I didn't feel
Which you
like
did.
I was.
Which you did.
I did, and I moved to a very red state, and I used to say that having grown up in a very diverse, um, uh, majority Black area, and that I was never going to a red state, and I was never moving, anywhere outside of, my lovely little blue area. And I did, and I didn't do it, I didn't do it for him. I did it for us, and
Yes.
also for me, and so I never at any, the shifts that I've made in my life have never felt like a sacrifice just, for him or for this relationship. They have all felt like things for me, just
Yeah.
as much as they've been for us. I think that's part of it.
Correct.
So the majority of my friends, both male and female, because I have a good amount of guy friends too,
Yep.
have been incredibly supportive. I have had uh, one or two people who have tried to pull my relationship through their lens and how they see it and what
Mm.
they want it to look like, and how they interpret it, and what they're comfortable with
Right.
me doing. And
Yeah.
so that's hard, right? Because especially as a girl's girl, I have learned to really trust my girlfriends and
Right.
see them as huge support systems. So when you have a girlfriend that looks you in the face and is like, I just don't want you to be losing yourself with this man and in this relationship. And it's like, that's not what relationships do or are.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not living for a job or a
Mhm.
career. I'm living my life to be the highest expression of myself. And a lot of that is in loving another human being. So I don't
Yeah.
feel like I've sacrificed any part of myself by being in this relationship. So the one or two who have, and I had to learn very quickly that it was projection, not
Right.
some special prophecy that had been laid on them to
Right.
keep me
Right.
from getting hurt. That, like, it was like, no, girl, you're an adult. You can trust yourself, and that person can mean well, but that doesn't mean that their intentions are valid for you. So,
Correct.
so I've also learned that not everybody gets to be in your relationship, nor should they be
That's
in.
right. Nor should they be.
I can say I am happy and hopeful and proud of Heavenly because she's definitely come a long way and is teaching us so much about growth and love. And I asked her what's next and how she foresees her future with her happily ever now.
So, what is next? I mean, you did the work, you stayed present. You mentioned at the beginning of our recording that you are engaged, but what does that, what's been coming up for you since you decided to say yes? And how do you think that's going to
So
shape
the
your way
hardest
today?
part, especially as a 38-year-old woman in um,
Mm,
in a really healthy, committed relationship. And healthy does not mean easy. I just want to be very clear about that.
right,
We do not do, I think, a
right,
good enough job of really explaining the amount of work that it takes to sustain a relationship. It is a daily practice. So for me, the hardest part is
right.
it's this like figurative expression of staying in the room uh, and not
Mm,
quitting or leaving. And I don't mean like physically
right.
getting up and leaving, but sometimes I do also mean that. But I mean like continuing um, to be present and to fight for my relationship, which means that I don't get to be selfish. I can be mindful of
Mm,
my needs and my wants, but I cannot be selfish. I have to think about
right.
another human being. I'm out running errands. I
Yeah,
need to check in with you and tell you, oh, I'm going to be a little bit later than I thought I was. I'm looking this thing up and I'm
right.
totally engrossed in it, but you just walked in the door. I need to put it down and acknowledge your presence. We are having miscommunication, and I need to actually fight and power through the discomfort of really wanting to tell you, shut the fuck up and go to hell. And when,
Yeah.
know, and I go,
And by the way, just go
exactly,
away.
like, you're so stupid. Why don't you get this? I can't be preoccupied with being right. And that doesn't mean that or
Yeah.
it doesn't, and also just getting rid of the idea of being right. There is no right and there is no wrong. There's no victim and there's
Yes.
no punisher,
Right.
but it also means not being silent. And that means that when you do something that is annoying or uncomfortable or different from what I wanted or thought, I don't suffer in silence and then hold it against you later. I have to put on big girl
Yeah.
panties and objectively just tell you, I didn't want this or I didn't like that. So can we
Right.
do it different the next time? And to also allow for a next time. That's huge. So
Yeah.
it's hard. We spend so much time. One of the luxuries of being single as you age, and so you're making more money, is you really only have to think about yourself and please
Yeah.
yourself and deal with that. And it's a big shift to factor another person.
It is. Yeah. I've definitely been relishing in all of my quote unquote self care because it involves a lot of spending money and time on me. And so, yeah, I may get a rude awakening I am going to get a rude awakening very soon, but it's one that I welcome with the twins that my sister's
Oh
having,
yeah,
and me physically being around to help. But that's still different, right? Like I can give
yes,
them back.
yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
the next, so I really, yeah, my next level is, what are how are you sacrificing that time or opening yourself up or being present to also have to think about someone else that's not the kids or your mom or your sister,
Yeah, and
etc.
the good thing is that
Um,
it won't feel like a sacrifice when you do it. It
right.
may feel new and uncomfortable at times, but it won't feel like a sacrifice.
So I know I will be Team Heavenly for her happily ever now. And I asked her for me, but also for any of the listeners of Jay in Transit who are looking to break out of relationship hater phase or be more present and recognize the possibilities around them, or even self-love and honesty with self, to give us some tips on how to get there.
Okay, and because I, would love to leave our listeners and me at this point with some action steps. What would you say some action steps are for folks in coming out of the relationship hater phase and looking to be present and enter into something new and different with another human being?
I think the biggest thing is to really be kind with yourself and honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it flips. Maybe you need to be honest first and kind first, because there have been times where, in coming out of this phase, I knew at first it was like, I just really need some dick. So I need some good dick. Can I get a good fuck buddy? And I had to be really honest with myself. And so that, I can't then, and I had to be kind with that and not take that to mean that I am, betraying this ultimate goal that I have, or that I've somehow, gotten off the wrong track, or then turning that fuck buddy into, potential Mr. Right. Cause that's not the purpose that you're supposed to be. So being very honest with yourself about what it is that you need each step of the way, and going after that. We do that with food. We wake up and go, I really need some coffee, or I really need a bagel, And so it's like, do that in the relationship. And so if I really just want to date so that I can get back into that rhythm and figure out what that is, do that. So being very clear about where you are in this process and not feeling like you're too late in the process. So I would say to definitely start with that. And then remembering that it is consistent, present work when you do get in that relationship, that it is uncomfortable. And so making sure that that person shares your deal breakers, your values, and that, listen, that can be anything. It does not have to be monogamy. I think a lot of women think that monogamy is their deal breaker. And I watch some of these women and it's like, no, that's not your deal breaker. Your deal breaker is finance.
And that's definitely that's personal to you and that person, for sure.
Yeah. And then also being okay creating your own fairy tale. Or
I was going to say, in your own lane. It doesn't have to look like someone else's.
Oh my God. Our engagement looks totally different from what society said it was supposed to look like. We were supposed to go on some kind of scavenger hunt, and it was supposed to be all over Instagram. And everybody and their mama was supposed to be there, and we were supposed to rent out a movie theater, and there was supposed to be an animated story and a new song created with it. And
you had too much time. You had too much time.
We were sitting on the couch. I was eating pizza, and I looked like trash. And it was the best. And I didn't even cry. And as you're supposed to cry, and I was like, I can't even cry because this just feels really good. Like he was supposed to have asked me out, and here I am telling him, not even asking him, but telling him he should date me. We moved in together. Before we got engaged, and I moved out here with just an idea of what I wanted to do for the next phase of my career. And so a lot of it has been really creating, just like you said, create your own lane and being comfortable. So much of a successful relationship is being comfortable with the decisions that you and your partner make.
Yeah, very true.
And being happy too. Oh my God, can we have some fun? Oh my God.
Well, we have no choice but to have fun. We take ourselves way too seriously in other areas. So definitely, if it's not fun, it's not worth it. So, and that's advice actually that I got from one of my law school best friends. Whenever she, talks about her relationships and whatever other stuff she's getting into, she's like, if it's not fun, it's not worth it. Move on to something else. Yeah. So I am so honored and very grateful for you being so open, present, and vulnerable in my second episode. And I'm can't wait to see what's next for you and your fiance. And I'm thinking I may have him on here too.
Oh God, that would be so funny. I totally support it.
It won't be talking about what we talked about, but I think
he adores you, so he'll do whatever you ask him to do. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to connecting again soon.
Oh my God. You know, I love you. Enjoy Syracuse. And
Thank you.
of course, we will talk soon.
Love you too.
Well, thank you all for rocking with me in episode 2 of Jay in Transit. I hope that there were some nuggets that you will find helpful in whatever phase of your love journey you find yourself. And I hope that you continue to follow me as we discover a few more of these topics. You can find me on Instagram at Jay in Transit. And so far, this podcast is on Anchor, so anchor.fm. Until next time.